So here's another daily coding challenge. It's quiz time, it says over here. It's time for a quiz. So the question is basically this, which is we've got this variable and we've assigned it the value of 4, and then we do x, our variable is called x, and then we do x divided by equals, which means reduce yourself by this value, and then x times 2, and the question is obviously, is it A, B, C or D? Which one of these is actually the answer? And the way to really go about this, or at least the way that I'm thinking of it, is that if x equals 4 here, we can start replacing the values. So we're going to take this 4 and stick it straight into here. And we're going to have a 4 times 2, which is going to give us, so this whole side of the right hand side of this equation here is going to be 8. And the divided by equals 2, normally we actually see a plus equals is much more common. But the divided by equals, so I'll write that just if I do an undo twice, 3 times, there we go, I'll just write it over there. We quite commonly see a plus equals, that's more common, so like plus equals 1, for example, and that would be an increment. But it works the same thing for like multiply by equals, and also it would work for subtract, and it would work for divided by equals. So it basically means divide it by that particular number, which is, so let's divide x by this value here. So our value of x actually was 4. So what it's actually suggesting to me is that we are going to end up with a 4 divided by an 8, and if any of us are good at fractions, that should give us a half, and therefore the answer should be C. So we can actually go and do this now in the code itself and see if that is actually true. So let's make a little code block, and we do an x equals 4. We can actually even say cheekily that x is an integer, although x might not end up being an integer afterwards. This is just a hint in Python. So, and hints are not adhered to necessarily, so they're just hints to tell the user what it starts off as, at least. So then we do x divided by equal to, and we've got an x times by 2, and then we've got to remember here that this x is actually this value here, which is 4. So it's like saying x divided by equals and then 8. This whole thing here would change to 8. So we can then just do a print of x just like that. But just to illustrate this point before I do this, I'll actually copy this line and I'll paste it over here, and I will comment this line out there and replace this. So this would have been 4 if that was true, times by 2, and that's going to evaluate itself to 8. So we should be left with an x divided by equal to 8, and we knew that x was 4, so we should have 4 over 8. That's why I'm assuming that the answer is going to be a half, and the indications are looking good for that, because indeed we get a half over here, which is going to correspond to our half answer over there. So now let's actually expose this and see if it is actually true, like our assumptions and our understanding of how Python actually works, which is kind of like regular mathematics, and we see this like plus equals divided by equal to and so forth quite commonly. So when we actually run this function over here now, we still get the same half over there. So indeed our answer was C. And just to kind of like illustrate it one more time in a little bit of clarity, which is if we do create this, or at least to show this incremental operator, because we don't often see it with a divide, but what we do quite often see is something like x equals, say for example 10, and then we say x plus equals 1. It's quite a common thing. We could say that x equals 2x plus 1. Let's increment like this. I quite actually prefer doing this, but quite often in coding we do see this, and if we were to print out the x value here, it would be incremented by the value of 1. So it equally works with things like we could decrement it by a value of 1 and we get 9. And well, if we multiplied it by 1, it wouldn't show very much because we just get the same 10 back. And we could also divide it by 1. But let's just put a 2 in here, and we can multiply it by 2. We see we get 20. and then if we were to divide it by 2, we would get a 5 back. So that's how we generate our answer. So it's the divided by equals to operation in Python. If you like this video, thumbs up, follow, like, and all the rest of it. And even if you don't like the video, still give me a thumbs up, follow, and like.